Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Western Gallery BFA Artist Talk series. I am here with Danil, who I'll introduce here shortly. But thanks for joining us today. This is our last week of Artist Talks. I hope you're able to chime in into as many as you can, but we're glad you're here with us today. Do stick on for Nicole's that will be shortly to follow after this one. But to get into the nitty gritty today, I'm going to be chatting with Danil for about 20 minutes, and we would love to be able to address some questions from you all, the audience today. So if you have any questions or comments, you want to know a little bit more about what's behind us here, because this is a very elaborate work. We're going to chat about many factors of this installation, but we might not get to all of it. So if there's something stands out to you, something we might talk about that you don't understand, please go ahead and put your questions in the Q&A box on Zoom, and we will get to those towards the end of our time. And it's especially great to have Danil here to be able to answer those live. So do take us up on that experience. But we're gonna jump in. So I'm here with Danil Sonjaya, and Danil crafted this structure, this chandelier that is rotating beautifully behind us right now. And there's a lot to unpack in this work, and I want to be able to dive into the multifaceted nature of your work. But first, congrats, Danil.
Thank you.
You finished your BFA year during a global pandemic.
Yeah.
You have a lot to be proud of. And this is a really fantastic work, very engaging. And I should say, I know you all are looking in on this virtually, but you do need to come in and experience this work in person. It's very captivating. I know you've seen people laying underneath to experience it. People walk around and look at the light and the shadows that you can kind of see on the gallery walls behind us. So it's extremely engaging, and it's very detailed too. There's a lot to take in from close up and far away. So why don't you describe to us what you've created here and, this culminating body of work for you for your BFA year? What are we looking at?
I've basically created like a series of memories, I would say. And it's just like a whole bunch of different architectural fragments of homes that I've lived in or moved around throughout my childhood and now early adulthood. And it's basically a chandelier of memories. What would you like me to elaborate?
Yeah, no, that's great. I think that idea of a chandelier of memories, right? We all know what a chandelier is, but then if you think about memories, what about this to you, or through the forms or what you created, what about it is achieving the idea of a memory? Because we understand a chandelier is something hanging, right? So what in particular about this articulates memories?
So when I researched like psychology and the way your mind works, when you look at a memory or when you recall a memory, it changes every time you recall it. So every time you try to remember some part of history, it's going to evolve and slightly change. And so when you look at this piece, it's literally changing every time you see it.
Yeah.
You could pick one singular frame, and the next time you see it come around, it might be slightly tilted or on a different color with the light in the middle. So that's how I would look at the memory aspect of the chandelier.
Yeah, and it's rotating, it's moving. How about the color? Because I think the color and the pattern is really significant. And I know my colleague Chris has a few images of details that were shown at the beginning of this talk, and I'd love for you all to see that. So around each of the individual frames that are suspended on a fishing wire, even though it looks invisible, it looks like they're just floating. All of these little wooden frames are emblematic of spaces that are particularly important to you. And then you've wrapped them in a specific color or pattern or material. Can you tell us about that wrapping and the material significance?
Yes, most of the colorful ones, like the cellophane, the plastic, the red, greens, and yellows, those are kind of like a memory of stained glass throughout travels and stuff like that. And then there's the batik, which is the patterned one there. And some of them are quite literally from Java in Indonesia. And it's literally like my family's memory of home, what they had to give me to use for this piece. And so I wanted to like take a version of myself, a piece of myself, and put it into the piece, because without it, I don't think it would have been as personal to me, and more so just a general idea.
Yeah.
So the batik is like me in the piece.
Yeah, let's dive into you a bit more, because I know you just mentioned fabric from Indonesia, but our audience might not know your story and your background and your identity.
Yes.
So let's dive back, because I think this was a really striking part when I chatted with you in our studio visit, and you shared about your upbringing and your personal history that's led you to this body of work. Tell us about that.
So my parents, they split up when I was quite young, and my mother now lives in Indonesia. She lives on the island of Bali. And my father lives here on the San Juan Islands. So I've grown up on multiple islands throughout high school and now college. And basically I would spend 6 months out of each year either in Indonesia or here, traveling in between. But I would just have an awkward sense of home or a sense of place, I think is what led me to this work, is that I was always moving. And every time I came back to either my father's house or my mother's house, things would slightly change. Walls would be painted a different color. There'd be a new addition in the garden, or we might have moved even, a lot of moving. And so that's kind of what I took as my identity, I would say. Like, I personally think that I have moved and grown throughout these houses and never really attaching to one singular house. It's been multiple different homes.
And I remember when you shared about this, it wasn't that you were looking back at it as something you were upset about or sad. It was more of like, you've championed this. Like, this is your life you're really proud of. And you want to show the multi-layered experience you've lived, right? And it's created who you are and who you're going to be. I mean, very much so, this is a work that's representative, your past, your present, and even your future, right? Because homes are going to be something that's always going to be interchangeable and shifting and changing. I just think I would applaud you, right, for making such a personal work based off of your identity, and it's created this fantastic work. So I want to talk a little bit more about the frames. And I know Chris has already shown a few of those individual frames, but I know some of them are very specific to like a view of a home that you've lived in. Some of them represent kind of a general theme of domestic architecture. Because I think you spent a lot of time making those frames. I don't want to jump just right past that. So let's talk about the process of making these wooden frames that are the core of the chandelier.
So I would say a lot of them are literally scaled down references to different walls within the houses I've lived in. So it's just like the scaled down model. And I got the idea of framing because just like the framework of a home, what is my home? I'm literally building it in this scenario, this chandelier. And so I used just small wooden dowels and like, guess I'm taking back control of the home atmosphere in that way. And so it's like a very process-based creation of the work. I don't know if you can see the one in the middle there that's tilted and turning, and it's like a staircase.
Oh, okay.
That one is like my first piece, actually, of the puzzle, and just working with that and creating the framework literally of the piece.
Yeah. I remember when you were at the moment of creating all these frames and you just had stacks of them. And I remember even talking to you, I'm like, you could just show a stack of these and that's like aesthetically really beautiful and conceptually strong, because it's showing the layers and layers and layers and the places you've been and the homes you've been. And it shows your clever making and your craftsmanship. I think this work has a lot of potential to be shown in lots of different ways. But you've obviously arrived at this for this moment, for this, BFA year. I think we should talk about the installation process for you, because you had quite the endeavor of putting this work up. You didn't get to see it in its full completed state until the show essentially was open.
Yeah, no one did.
Yeah, and I think that's important, especially for those that are in their early studies of art and wanting to be an artist. Like, that's an important understanding to know that installing your work is a whole different beast. And you may not know what it's going to look like until that moment when the gallery lights are off and the first day is done, So can you share with us a little bit about your planning, what it took to create this work, the legwork of this, the structural?
Yes. Well, I mean, I had, I don't know, upwards of 10 different installation ideas that I had to filter down. And I came to a chandelier because of a couple artists that I was looking at. And they referencing chandeliers in a different way, but I saw one particular artist, Olafur Eliasson, and his use of glass and light and projection. I wanted to capitalize on the space that I had, I think was the main thing. And process-wise, I kind of knew what I was getting into as I was building the pieces, the frames themselves. So I didn't really see the struggle in that, I guess. It wasn't like a stressful situation. I just knew that it would work based on all the other woodworking projects that I've done. And I mean, I'm glad it worked out. I guess there's like a lot up in the air, literally, until this moment, I would say.
And you had to create the rotating piece that's at the top, right? I mean, that took some ingenuity and maybe some math, which
a little bit of math
in the art studio field, we don't want to talk about math too much, but
taboo.
Yeah, I mean, you literally have a motor powering this frame that's rotating this, right? And, that took a little bit.
I think the weight worked out perfectly. I had to like calculate how much weight the motor could hold, how many rotations it was spinning, and how it would look in a bigger circle.
Right.
And that was a little bit of a process, but again, I think I felt pretty prepared for the challenge that I had. And the ring, I think the ring was almost one of my favorite parts because it was so different from the rest of the frames. It was just like a break from the 100 or so frames that I have here.
Yeah, I'm glad you actually just said that because I feel like that's probably a question that's pretty common. It's like, how many are there? So there's about 100.
About 100,
right?
Which is why the show, I mean, that my piece is called 100 Homes.
100 Homes.
Yes.
Okay. I see that we have a question, Danil, so I want to get to that. So my colleague Chris is going to read us the question and Danil will take a go at responding.
I shall try.
Go ahead, Chris.
Well, I wanted to share as well. There's a couple of comments. Emily says, it looks fantastic, and I'm obsessed with the moving shadows. And I know I'm just the commentator here, but I'm also obsessed with the moving shadows. So
thank you.
Could you talk about the importance of light in your work and how it relates to the content?
Did you catch that? The light.
Importance of light and content. Yes, the light. Well, the center light is kind of soothing in a way. It wasn't intentionally what I had in mind for the piece, but the projection and the shadows is kind of the space, the lack of physical space that I had in mind. I wanted to capitalize on the idea of being within something without physical walls, I would say. And that's why the light plays a big role in the piece. Originally, I had a huge idea of like making walls and light through that. And so this is kind of like a scaled down version of that. And basically, to sum it up, having people walk through this space that isn't physical, it's more visual and like sensory orientated. I wanted to like create a space without space with the light.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm glad someone asked about light because I think that has been a key element too. In addition to the architectural frames, light has always been like the other side that you've been trying to navigate and figure out. All your ideas were surrounding around how could I have light related to this? And I remember in our conversations thinking about light as being almost like this ambient presence of these past places too, right? Like when you think about nighttime and looking at homes, you see the lights of homes. I couldn't help but relate that idea of light inhabiting presence within architectural frames, like showing a lived in, experience of
and that's kind of what the light in the middle is for. It's kind of to just highlight the pieces when it changes. Like yellow, you'll see the yellow pieces more. Green, you'll see the green pieces more. And it's kind of just like they're all special in their own way. And that's what the light brings out for them.
Right. Yeah. And then the added spotlight that's coming from the gallery is showing these materials and these fabrics and the reflection, they're reflecting off each other. And like you mentioned, stained glass being, an influence to you. When you look at the walls, it looks like stained glass because they're overlapping and layering, just like you talked about, right? That idea of memory.
Mixing different shadows together.
Yeah, just like memories are obscured, right? So that's a good question. I'm glad someone brought that up. Thanks, Chris. So there's not another one, right? We're all set. Okay. So we're gonna, I wanted to chat about it was something about the light. This work, let's talk about the future for you. So this work obviously has a lot of potential to change. You can continue it as a chandelier. It can grow, it can get bigger, go in bigger spaces.
Mhm.
But outside of this work or with this work, where are you going next? And is this work going to go with you? Is it going to stay in this, space as a memory, or are you going to, carry it with you? What's next for you, Danil?
Well, I built it so it could come apart.
Okay.
Space is everything,
Yeah.
honestly, living, especially in Bellingham,
Yeah.
finding storage and stuff like that. But
Uh-huh.
I like the idea of like the modular aspect of my work. It's
Mhm.
been very modular
Mhm.
as of lately. So arranging these in different ways, I kind of like a timeline sequence for maybe the next time where it's just along the whole gallery space of whatever's next. That is my future for this piece. I want to add more frames,
Okay.
more materials, explore more,
Mhm.
maybe even use actual glass.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Do you want to continue, do you want to get an MFA? Do you want to take a break? Do you want to travel?
Both. I definitely want to take a break from school. Been
Okay.
doing it my whole life. And
Yeah, naturally.
kind of time
Yeah.
for a break.
Yeah.
Definitely want to travel. I will continue to create forever. I
Good.
think that's the goal.
Mhm.
Whether it's for money or not, or for just me,
Mhm.
I'm not sure yet,
Mhm.
but that is the goal.
Good. Are you going to stay in Bellingham or in Washington or?
At least for this year, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll see where the future goes from there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. And something we were talking about before the recording, we were talking about how COVID has obviously disrupted this idea of travel. So
Right.
hopefully you can begin travels again soon and literally start adding memories and spaces and time to your evolution of this work. But I do see some questions. So Chris, why don't you go ahead and read one of the questions?
And I like to share the compliments too. This says, it's the coolest thing I've ever seen. And that's in all caps. The concept is visually stunning and captivating. What was the most challenging part about making it?
the most challenging part was the installation. Obviously, well, I guess it's not obvious, but I had a lot of different ways I could have hung it up and a lot of different ideas about how I was going to hang it up, different shapes that they could encompass, different forms. And I realized that I didn't do enough calculating because math is hard, and that there's only so many ways I can fit so many of these pieces together without going bigger. So that was probably the hardest part of this whole piece. And plus I hadn't seen it like everyone else until it was finally up and running. And I had to wait for everything to come in and work. And
were you having like dreams about this work of like, it's not going to fit, it's not going to have, I don't know, like those like being able to complete
I wasn't worried
something?
about that aspect because I planned it out and you had the design layout for us.
Yeah.
That was, but like at the beginning of the year, I had dreams about it. And I was like, well, I guess that's what I'm doing for the year.
Okay.
And that's how it turned out. It's just more like I'm not saying I was winging it, but it's like I had to adapt to what was available.
Absolutely. I think that's a really important process. Those that are in their early like studies of the arts and interested in being a studio artist, you have to adapt to sites that you're displaying in. Like Danil literally couldn't come up with the final fabrication until you knew where this was going to be installed. So you had to kind of wait and work collaboratively with the Western Gallery to understand where it could go structurally. And, we had to think about where this could go feasibly. And that's kind of what designated, a few locations. I think we have another question and then we'll be wrapping up here shortly. So Chris, let's hear this other question.
It begins with a comment, such an amazing and detailed piece. Will you focus on this style of artwork later?
Will I focus on it later? Yes, I've already been like creating new pieces, but in a different sense. I like to play with scale a lot. I do partake in photo as well. So a lot of this work might evolve in a different matter in a photo form.
Okay.
And I do love playing with the light and the texture, but I might use a different material. Whatever is available right now, it's cardboard. Used up a lot of the wood for this project, but yes, definitely going to continue this style of work.
Good. My last question for you. Was there anything that surprised you once this was up, and maybe, I know you've been in the gallery like most days since the exhibition's been open, but as you've come in and experienced the work or seen people experiencing your work, has there been anything that surprised you about this now that it's installed, or like, oh, I didn't think about that factor, or
This shadow at the bottom here, I
Yeah.
don't know if anyone can see it, but it's kind
Yeah.
of like a bonus shadow for sure.
Yeah.
It's also very interesting in form,
yeah,
but I planned for those shadows. I didn't plan for this one. And I think from what I've heard from other people is that it's their favorite shadow. So that was very surprising to me.
yeah.
Um,
I have really enjoyed when people are walking around this, how their shadow then projects within your shadows,
I love that too.
right? So you get like even an additional layer of people experiencing your work.
It's the people in the space without the space.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There you go. Full circle.
Yes.
Well done, Danil. You've clearly created a very successful work, and I think it's going to take you many places. I didn't mean that literally, as it represents places you've gone, but
Yeah.
truly, I think this can relate to a lot of people. There's a lot of universal understanding of home and place and longing for travel and place, especially with the pandemic. So I think I just want to salute you. I think you've done a fantastic job. So congratulations on
Thank
completing your BFA year in such a tumultuous season of life that could have been easy to quit, but you persisted and you've created work that people are just gravitating towards.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And thanks for sharing today. Thanks for being open to, tell us a little bit more about your story, and for our audience to be able to have a deeper understanding of this. So when they come visit the gallery, they're going to come in and they're going to be able to waltz right in and have like a really personal understanding of this work.
I hope so.
Yeah. Yeah. So for those of you that haven't already, please look at our website, come into the gallery, make an appointment. We are open for, let's see, 2 more weeks, this week and next week. So make sure you get in, make an appointment, and come on in and see this work in person. So we are going to finish up here, and we're going to head into our next artist talk. So if you haven't registered or queued in, Nicole's Let Us Talk is next. Go ahead and find that link and queue in with us. And thanks for joining us. Thanks for your questions and comments and supporting our BFA artists.